Hey everybody, this is luckyDminor from Player Chess FFA. So today I'm trying to reach 2,200 possible ranking points. And whenever you try to win more ranking points, of course you have the question, do I play weak opponents in order to have an easy win possibly? Or do I try to play stronger opponents? And usually I would say playing stronger opponents is a better way to improve your ranking. Because one, you learn more playing stronger opponents. And two, when you play against weaker opponents, you only get a few points even if you win. But there's always the danger of losing, because sometimes even against three weaker players, you may get teamed by them and you may lose, and this may cost you maybe even up to 40 points or more in one game. So if I try to win more ranking points, I try to play stronger players. In this case, we have Nimsnich 1900 plus, Petro Rosa 2100 plus, and Kajar 1900 plus. So pretty good players. By the way, Nimsnicht is a German word for don't take. So he makes already a statement that we should not take his material. So maybe this is a good strategy, or maybe it will just bring us to take anyway. So let's see how the game unfolds. I will not comment every move, but I will stop and comment whenever there's something interesting is going on. So I start as red with the king's pawn, opening my queen and bishop for attacks, and also securing my king for bishop attacks from blue or green. Blue opens with the queen's pawn, possibly trying to promote the pawn at one point. Yellow is doing the same thing, and green is opening with the bishop's pawn, which sometimes is a good idea, because when the queen supports the pawn, it can promote after the yellow pawn has already passed, possibly. So sometimes that works pretty well. I do another pawn just to stop attacks from that bishop to my king when I start to promote my queen's pawn. And here already we see two bishops facing each other. I want to avoid that situation, so I try to do something about it possibly. And I push the pawn another step. I wouldn't possibly do that on the king side, because then the king side would be open, but with the bishop's pawn on the queen side, it's quite okay for me to push this pawn, and it's protected by the bishop and avoids material exchange with the bishops. Oh, I'm going false way. So blue secures his left side, and yellow goes for promotion. Green stops him, and I just balance my position. Yellow brings another pawn to strengthen the center and to win a queen at some point. And I just develop. Blue was opening the bishop's attack line to yellow, and yellow was closing it. I always tend to also close such attack lines. Now the green pawn is pushing. It can be for defense, to stop myself from advancing my position here, but it can also at some point attack my knight. Therefore, I want to stop that pawn from moving on, or at least having the option to take it if needed. So yellow continues with the pawn strategy, and green also completes his position here. Whenever those two pawns are in line and there's no chance for my bishop to attack green via that diagonal, I pull over the bishop in order to make pressure on the queen of greens. This is also a move I like to make whenever the knight is on this spot, the rook is protected on this spot and also protects the pawn, and it's much better than castling because the king would not be safe in that corner. Blue is castling. As I said, I don't think it's a good move to castle early in the game. In this case, it's not too bad because the pawns are already pretty locked down in position here. So he may think there's the secure corner there. So many just positional moves. And yellow opens his king to green, which is not very intelligent, especially to the player to your left side. This may be pretty dangerous. And now blue is starting to attack yellow or just wanting to stop pawn moves there. Yellow closes this diagonal again for the king. That's good. And green is starting to attack yellow at some point. I bring my knight more towards the center. This helps oftentimes to stop other pawns from promoting. This may also help at some point to protect the pawn if I wanted to push pawns. Also, it opens the diagonal for my bishop, which is threatening the rook once green would move the knight. Okay, I'm happy about this move. This stops attacks from the bishop and secures my position. Here, yellow also moves the bishop and attacks the queen at some point once the knight moves, so blue has to be careful. Okay, I don't like that so much, so now the bishops are facing each other, so at this point green can't move the knight because the bishop is hanging, but at some point this may be a confrontation for us. I just moved the king aside to have a second protection for this pawn and also to be able to push this pawn without opening my king. And now yellow attacks the king position. As I said, castling is a little tricky, risky in four-player chess. And even though the pawn structure was kind of fixed, yellow even sacrifices a knight, but as you see, he does not sacrifice a knight because at the same point, he's attacking the queen, and blue did not move away the queen, so blue's in trouble now. And since blue is in trouble, I try to step over with my knight and possibly do additional attacks on blue. He moves the queen, and the knight continues the attack. This is now really a sacrifice, but the blue king position is so weak that it may even be a good sacrifice. Green moves slowly and does not come to support blue, which maybe is a mistake in 4-player chess if you do not support your opposite player who's in big trouble, because once blue gets mated, green would be alone left with yellow and red in this case. So I attack blue, which maybe not a smart move, because now blue has the choice of taking this knight or my knight. But I figured since this knight is attacking the rook, that blue would leave my knight untouched. So let's see. He does. So I can move back and get away with it. Blue is still in a troubled position with his king. Now yellow is again opening his own king position via this diagonal. Maybe a mistake, but he tries to push the pawn possibly forward until it gets a queen. Green is kind of waiting, and I'm making additional attack moves towards blue. Blue is trying to counterattack yellow. Don't think that's too smart in the moment. Green is still playing slowly. And I prepare the rook for possible pawn pushings on this line. My knight gets attacked. So blue attacks red, blue attacks yellow, and his position is pretty weak. So this is very risky. Yellow keeps pawn pushing, and green also goes for promotion. I step back to the center to protect my knight and also to prevent green's promotion possibly. From my point of view, a mistake from blue. The knight is hanging. Let's see. Yellow takes it. And I start pushing the queen's pawn. Yellow goes for a queen. And here is the attack that I mentioned earlier. The yellow king position was unsafe towards the left side. So now, since green attacks yellow, basically red and blue have a free kick on yellow if we want to. I do not want to. I am not able in the moment, but I also wouldn't want to weaken the opposite player. But let's see what happens. So I figure since blue will now attack yellow, I can make a double pawn step, even though he could take it en passant. But I want to lock this position down in order to avoid any attacks from blue. And blue takes the free attack on yellow, even though the pawn was protected by the rook. Yellow has to move his king first. Or in this case, moves the knight, which is another mistake because now the rook is hanging. I bring in a second knight for control of the center. Also, I want to have a double attack on these knights. Blue takes. And yellow tries a counter attack on blue. At this point, I was thinking, okay, can we somehow mate blue at this point? How could I attack blue? What could I do? But actually, I do not see any fast moves with my material to really attack blue. So I don't know if this move with the bishop makes sense. Green further attacks yellow. Now blue and green join forces on attacking yellow. This pawn is hanging. So blue is kind of recovering a bit, and yellow is getting in trouble. I figure that at this point a counterattack on green would be good to support yellow. What I didn't see was that the knight was protected in two ways. I was thinking that I have a protected knight there. Okay, maybe it was a mistake what I did. But still, it would help possibly yellow a bit. Yellow's bishop gets attacked, moves back, and green is taking. So definitely was kind of a mistake on my side. I have to move my queen now. The queen comes back into blue's territory and attacks my pawn. So now I get a little into trouble. Yellow's trying to promote. And what is green planning? Any attacks via this diagonal? No direct threat in the moment. And I don't see that this pawn was hanging. I just moved my knight. And luckily, blue didn't see the hanging pawn either. So I get away with it for the moment. Yellow is trying possibly to protect his king, his king's pawn, but again opening his king for green's attacks. Not smart, I believe. Green doesn't take advantage from that, and I protect my pawn. Blue's developing and also stopping yellow from promote. He protects his king in the corner. And green is developing his position. I'm kind of scared about some attacks at this pawn at some point, but not in the moment. I pin that rook and threaten the queen. Blue develops for possible attacks to my bishop. Maybe yellow is preparing a check on blue. And now green is advancing in the center, attacking the pawn, or maybe locking the pawn's position in order to avoid yellow to promote. I attack green, but also keep my knight in the center. Okay, and here's the check on blue, so I have now a free kick on blue if I want to. And yellow's pawns get threatened. So what can I do now? I can take this pawn and attack the bishop and possibly take both items. Do I have a chance to attack the blue queen, which is unprotected? Yes, I can attack it with my queen. So what did I do? I attacked the queen. Blue has to move. Yellow takes. The knight was protected by the queen, but yellow thinks I will take the queen, so he's fine. But here's a move from green, which I didn't see. He moves the pawn, he gets the queen, and he protects the blue queen. So I can't even take it. I should have possibly taken the pawn and the bishop instead of trying to take the blue queen. And in this point, possibly I could exchange queens, but it would of course be painful and expensive for my material. So I decide to pull back. Also hoping that possibly blue and green would exchange queens somehow. But of course, blue rather takes yellow. And now it's interesting. Will green take blue, or will they start to team? Yellow has lost lots of material during this part of the game. And green is not taking blue. And that is pretty dangerous now for yellow and myself. So we were in a very good position. We were just about to kill blue queen. And now green has a second queen. Didn't take the blue queen. Yellow lost the rook. So now we are at the edge of losing this game. Yellow being the weakest on the board now, possibly. And I'm facing two strong opponents to my left and right. So I start to promote to push my pawn, also wanting to have a second queen at some point if possible. Small move by blue, don't know what he wants with the queen. And yellow is attacking the blue queen, so yellow continues to beat on blue, waiting for my support for his attack. Green moves back and leaves us just doing what we want to do. And I now do the attack with the bishop, which I mentioned earlier again. But of course, now the blue queen can protect the bishop, and I only got a pawn and not both. Yellow continues the attack, now attacking also the queen. And green starts to attack blue, which makes me happy because the teaming of blue and green started little and was over again. So it's not a strong team strategy, it's just a wavering team strategy. Green could have killed the blue queen, and now he puts blue on a check. Okay. So now I can take the bishop because blue is in check. And the yellow knight, of course, can take the blue queen, and we are much better off than we have been just a few seconds ago. Green and blue were about to win, and now green made a mistake. And blue is suffering from it. But green is pushing for having a third queen. So maybe he even thinks that he can win alone. I try to stop the pawn with my knight. And blue resigns. And this sometimes happens if you do not support the opposite player, like green didn't support blue in this case. The opposite player may just resign and you will then be alone against two players. Well, that's a big reason why you should, at least at some degree, support the opposite player. Okay, yellow is attacking the green rook. Moving away. And the thing that was prepared earlier is now coming true. The blue rook was pinned and I can take the queen. So even though green was just about to get a third queen, now he only has one. And this one queen now also gets attacked by yellow. And green is, I don't know, getting nervous, getting frustrated, taking the bishop and losing the queen. Why is he doing that? Do you see any reason? Queen could have just moved away with the queen, maybe attacking my knight and protecting the pawn. Yes, the bishop was hanging. The rook is hanging. Yeah, moving the queen here would have been the best move to protect the rook and the pawn. So I can take the rook. Yellow can take the queen. And here now suddenly yellow and red are on top. I attack the bishop. Yellow takes. Green protects. And I move back with my queen. I do not like to have my queen standing around in foreign territory too long. I'm always afraid of getting attacks on my queen. Yellow protects. So at this point, for red and yellow, it's a big question. Shall we continue teaming and killing green before we fight it out? Or shall we switch partner? At this point, since yellow is having less material than red, yellow may be thinking about partnering with green to kill me first. So I can never be sure about the partnership. Yellow's attacking blue or just withdrawing his knight because the knight will never mate the king there. My knight gets attacked. Also still green has pawns that may promote. I pull back and signal also to yellow that I want to attack green. And yellow is actually trying to mate blue's king, which is possible, of course, together with the queen and the knight. Usually I would not do that at this point of the game because yellow's king position is not safe and he's always under threat that he may get attacked by green or possibly by me. Since green doesn't have a queen anymore, maybe yellow gets away with it. And I'm thinking whether I could steal a mate at some point, but these gray rooks are in my way. Okay. Also, I have to fight it out with green and my knight gets attacked. I could move away and open up green's attack on the yellow queen and also allowing yellow to kill the bishop. And I try to do that, even kind of sacrificing my knight because I think yellow will take green and protect my knight. Well, the pawn will take anyway, but then green would lose another knight and basically green would be close to dead. And yellow does. I didn't see the rook, so there was a second way of taking the knight. Didn't see that, another mistake. But still, it's nice to have the green bishop taken from the board. This is a very nice position where the bishop protects two pawns and is protected by the pawns. So pretty hard to destroy that position. And also the front pawn always just one step ahead, away from promoting. I continue the attack on green. And of course, now yellow can kill the green pawn because green is under attack. But he doesn't do it. He gives another check. But the king just goes away. I was hoping for yellow to take the green pawn. I attack the rook and the bishop I'm also willing to even exchange material to lose my knight. Yellow also maybe starts to want to have another queen. And I also go for another queen. So blue shortly before mate. Can green steal the mate? No. Can I steal the mate? Possibly. Yes, that would be stealing the mate. Green's first. Green is getting another queen because yellow just moved away. And I don't see it. I don't see that I can steal the mate. I could have already been on 51 points. Green would be very far away to win against me. I was afraid about green getting too many queens, but I didn't see the mate. So in this case, it's stalemate. And I lose my knight. Now I'm going for another queen. Green does not stop me, lucky me. So I have a second queen. And now since green has a queen again, yellow's king is pretty unsafe. But I counterattack on green, take a chance. Green threatens to exchange queens, but I can just take the pawn. Hopefully green is not exchanging queens, but he does. Green is kind of given up. So it's now only yellow and me having queens. And yellow is threatening to get a second queen. Green resigns, and now it's only 2 players left. I have a few points more than yellow, but not enough to claim the win. I somehow have to fastly mate him or stop him to get a second queen. In this case, I can give a check. And I can put my queen in the way of the pawn. Of course, the pawn can create another queen here, but then I would take the other queen. But of course, my queen gets pushed away very fast. But I do not move. I counterattack his queen instead. My queen gets taken, his queen gets taken, and now he still has a pawn being shortly before promotion. Only his own knight is standing in the way. Oh, it's not even standing in the way. He can just, as I said earlier, make a side stab. So now yellow has the only queen. And I'm thinking, can I still win this? Yellow's king is pretty open. I can possibly give checks with my white bishop. And I can also, of course, try to use my rooks and the many pawns I still have to also promote another queen. And I could possibly try to have a quick mate on yellow and then on green and then claim win. So I try to push the pawn. My pawn gets attacked, and also this position gets blocked. I protect the pawn, and the knight blocks my way and also attacks the other pawn again. I attack the knight, moves away, and I try to move forward with my pawn. The bishop protects the next field, but it's already 2 times protected by my figures. So I can just push it and exchange material. I lose another pawn, and still I don't have a queen, he has a queen. I try with the next pawn. But the knight is blocking the field, and I get a check. And now the pawn is hanging, ready to be killed. I move back and try to get a maximum secure king position if I can, because then the yellow queen would have to try to make difficult attacks on me, and I have a chance possibly to kill the queen at some point. Yellow has a few pawns left, goes for another queen, and I also go for another queen. This was a mistake by yellow. So the double pawn position is not so easy to develop and not so easy to protect. So pawns raise. I'm a step further, but I cannot move on because this pawn is protecting that field. He's double protecting that field. I was trying to get my bishop in line with the king so that I could move the pawn and attack the king at the same time, but he was smart enough to move away. I check him to get him back to the other field, but he's smart enough to go into the corner instead. So now I attack the knight that's pinned in front of the king. But the knight also is protected by the queen. I establish my king. And yellow stops the pinning of the knight. And I move my pawns. Now I attack the yellow pawn. He protects. I try again to establish an attack on the king to move my pawn. He moves away. I give a check. So long end game. And now I have two pawns ready to be queens, but those fields are covered. And I choose this side because then I can take again with my pawn and exchange queens. Because the king is under attack too. He has to take, I can take back. And now finally I have kind of won this game, having two rooks against a knight and two pawns. And he resigns, being on second place anyway. So that was it. And yeah, I reached my goal. I got to 2,200 points, just barely. But as you have seen, it was a pretty challenging game with different situations where first I had a pretty strong position and blue was pretty weak. Then yellow got some problems, then green and blue teamed and red got into problems. Then green betrayed the teaming with blue and basically asked us to kill blue. And from that on, it was a pretty good game for yellow and red. And in the end, I had the better end. So thank you for watching. In the next game, possibly we will see whether I can establish further from 2,200 points or may lose it again. Let's see. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.